Hello everyone. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through a simple implementation where we are going to take some data, transform it into a JSON object in JavaScript, and then display that data. It's going to be a list of some entities, and display that data into the web page. So the first part of this video is all about a very simple implementation to see how we can use some DOM manipulation methods in JavaScript, see how we can transform some data into JSON object, loop over that object, display things on the page. And then after that, I'm going to give you some another piece of data and some templates so that you can practice and work on a relatively more complicated example. So let's get started. You're going to find the data in the description below. The data that I'm going to start with is a YAML file. So a YAML file is a very basic, simple like text file. This is the data that I'm going to be using on this first implementation. And we need to take this data and transform it into a JSON object manually so that we get to understand and learn more about JSON objects. Then loop over this object, display it on the page, and then move forward to the next part, which is the practice on a different set of data. So after you watch the video, you will have to work with this YAML file, which is actually a little bit larger, and you're going to transform it into a JSON object, loop over it, and then use a template so that it looks nicer than the simple example I'm going to start with first. So I'm going to start with this piece of data. I'm going to grab this data and I'm going to be coding in CodePen, but you should definitely use VS Code, create a new workspace and use a local server, something like live server to serve your project. Or you can try out CodePen if you want, but I encourage you to use like a tool like VS Code on your local environment. Let me copy this data here. And the first thing I want to do is I want to put this inside a free tag just to take a look at the data. And then give this page a dark mode. So here's our data. And we have to figure out how to construct an object or a series of objects and enclose them in a JSON structure. The first thing you will see here, you will notice is that this is a repeated repeated list of books. So these are 3 entries, and they are books that each entry contained an author, a title, the date of publication, the price, and the publisher. And all of these are different books, but they have the same structure. They have the same 5 properties. The first thing that we need to do is figure out what the actual object will look like. So we need to create an object that will hold the information for all 3 books. So that would be like an object. And then we need to convert these properties into object properties or object keys, then figure out what the appropriate data type for each of these entries or fields or properties will be. So first I'm going to sketch out like the simple structure. So some pseudocode. We definitely need an author property, and the type would be a string. As you can see above, it's obviously a string here. Then we have a title that's also a string. Then we have the date of publication, which I believe can also be, we can also use a string here. It's not clearly a number because we have these dashes. So we're going to keep this format. Now the price is a floating point number, as you can see here, but we can use the number type in JavaScript, which also covers integers and floating point numbers. And we have the publisher, which is, of course, another string. So that's kind of like the schema of our object, like the basic structure, the basic interface of these book objects. Once we have this in place, we can start creating the actual object for the first book, then the second, then the third one, and so forth. So I'm going to just grab these data here, copy it in here. I need to put the double quotes here. And of course, if the data that you get is in different format, for example, if this is, I believe you can even write strings or text in YAML like this without the quotes, you have to figure out the correct JavaScript type and of course transform the data accordingly. So if the data was in this form, we would definitely need to enclose these values into either double or single quote strings. Since we're going to be creating a JSON structure, I'm going to strictly conform to the JSON standard, which states that we must use double quotes. So even though an object in JavaScript can have either the properties or the values in single or double quotes, in JSON we strictly have to use double quotes both for the values and also for the keys, for the properties. So I'm going to stick with the JSON standard. Numbers can be, of course, have to be like written like just like a normal JavaScript number, but the properties will have to be enclosed also in double quotes. Now we're still in JavaScript land, so this is not exactly a JSON object. This is a JavaScript object, but we're going to be using a structure that will look or will be structured around the JSON standard. So we have this basic object that contains all 5 properties and all 5 values with the correct type. The next thing, of course, would be to replicate this. And since we need a list of objects, I cannot like store this in a variable like this. I need to enclose this in an array. So I need a list of objects. So all these objects will be enclosed in the square brackets. So that's a JavaScript array. Let me use the proper indentation. So we need a list of book objects. I'm going to name this books for now, and I will just quickly copy the values for the second object and then the third, and we can move on to actually displaying the data in the DOM in the web page. These, by the way, are some books, some imaginary books that were created by ChatGPT, and they're actually pretty funny. So let me put this. I need to put the commas here. So now I have converted this piece of data into an array that contains 3 objects, and they are conforming to the JSON standard, meaning they have like double quotes and they do not have invalid JSON types such as functions. For example, you cannot add a property that has a function as a value. This will be discarded by JSON. So if we're to convert this into an actual JSON object, we can the functions will be discarded. Let me clear the console. Okay, so we have this And now if I wanted to turn this into a JSON string in order like to save it on local storage or send it to a server or maybe save it to a file, I would go about and use the JSON stringify, which basically takes some value that can be converted into a JSON string. That would give me a stringified, a string version of this object of the books list, which would look almost exactly the same. You can see there's some like different here, the CodePen console output kind of like changes things a bit. Let me open up the real console. As you can see here, CodePen converted this into single quotes, but this is not how JSON stringify works. This is actually the output of the JSON stringify. As you can see, all the properties and values are enclosed in double quotes. So that's kind of like the actual output. In here, the console output of CodePen is a little bit misleading, but now I'm going to be working with the with the object, with a list, with a books list. So I'm not going to work with a stringified version of this object because I'm right inside JavaScript. I'm not sending this data to a server. I'm not saving it anywhere, so I can work straight from the object. But the object is ready to be, can be actually transformed into a JSON string because it conforms to the standard. I will now delete this. The next step would be to display our content into the page. So I'm going to be using an unordered list. Let me put some heading. And the idea is to go through this books array and for each entry display the contents, display the information about the author, title, date of publication, price, publisher inside the web page. First, I'm going to start by creating a kind of like basic HTML template as to how the book entry should look like. So I'm going to just hard code the values. I'm going to start with a very simple template, almost no CSS styling. So let me use a strong here for the author name. And I'm going to be just creating a very, very basic structure. So date, let's say of publication, whatever. And then I have price, which is going to be, probably we would need something like the currency symbol. So for that, we have certain HTML entities, as they are called, like encodings for the proper currency symbols. For example, for the euro, we have this HTML entity, and we also have something for other currencies as well, like the yen, or I believe the pound. But I'm going to stick with the euro for now. And we have the publisher, which of course will have this information. Now, you can probably work with something a little bit better than this one. Maybe you can have some sort of like different styling on the title. Maybe it's slightly bigger. I can use some inline style here. So font size, I'm going to bump it up to 1.2 REMs and, or maybe, and let me put the author underneath the title. So okay, so once we have the template, now we need to convert this static content with dynamic content. So rather than hard coding or manually writing this information, we're going to loop over this array of objects. And then for each object, we're going to display the data within this template. Now that I have my very simple template, I will just comment this out. I'm going to copy this and comment this out. So this was just to work with plain HTML and CSS, see how the template for each book entry should look like. And then I'm going to go into the books, the JavaScript code. Now I'm going to give this unordered list an ID so that I can pick it up from through my JavaScript code, and also probably use some CSS to put some nice, I don't know, styling. So it's empty. There's nothing here. I will close the first two objects and just keep this open. So the next step would be to, so the first step is to convert the YAML file data into a JSON structure. Then we need to display, so loop over the books list or JSON data, and then display its book. So let's just go through the next step, which is to loop over the books list. Now there are plenty of ways to loop over a list, an array in JavaScript. I will use the simple for of loop. So with for loop, I say const book of books. So this is the syntax. We declare a variable with const most of the times, give it a name that's appropriate. Most of the times it's just a singular form of the noun or the variable that contains the list of things. So const book of books, or const profile of profiles, or const product of products. And then these will go through each entry in this array. And inside the for loop, the book variable will contain the data for the first entry of the array, the second, the third, and so forth. So I can console log book, and you will see that I'm iterating like 3 times. I can also create a simple counter just to see how many iterations I go through. So for every iteration in the loop, I'm just adding 1 to the counter, and you will see 1, 2, 3. So this code goes through the list and 3 times. So now that I have this loop in place, I will just comment this code, and I will get rid of the counter. Now I have to display each book inside the for loop. What I need to do at this point is to actually merge or take this template and inject the data, the book data, inside this template. Now there's still plenty of ways to kind of like do this. The DOM API, the DOM methods available in JavaScript allow us to dynamically create some DOM elements, some HTML elements, and inject them in the page. I will use a rather simple way to do this for now, which is I'm going to create a string. I'm going to use the template literals because they allow me to write multi-line, to define multi-line strings, whereas with double or single quotes, I cannot use a new line. The string has to be 1 line, but with the backticks, I can just write a string and have many lines like span. So this is the book entry. I can display it on the page by picking an element that exists in the HTML and then injecting that code. In here, I want to inject this template in the book unordered list. So I have to pick this element using a DOM method and then inject this as an HTML string inside this element. So the first thing I have to do is to actually pick a reference of the unordered list with ID books. I can do that with the document.querySelector method, which is a super method to select DOM elements using JavaScript. I'm going to use the hash ID selector. This will give me a reference to the book list element, to this U element. I can even log it. And hopefully we'll see the, as you can see, this is the contents of the unordered list. It also contains the comments. The comments are also part of the DOM, so I can see them. Let me just get rid of them for now and have a simpler output here. As you can see, I can see the UL 3 times because I'm looping over these 3 books. Now I don't need to query the books 3 times. I need to just grab this element once. I don't need to run this command 3 times in the loop, and maybe the loop gets a little bit bigger, the list gets bigger. I can pick this up before the loop starts, so this command will run just once. The element is already there, so I don't need to just loop over the elements and then pick it up every single time. So I have this book list, and now I need to inject this HTML into the book list element. I can do this by using a method. First of all, I'm going to name this book list element and this book entry element just to make it clear that these are HTML elements. And I'm going to say the inner HTML is going to be the book entry L. So I'm going to be injecting this string inside the book list element, the UL, by using the inner HTML property and assigning the value. Now you can see that there's only a single entry inside the UL element now, and that's the last object. Now we don't know whether this is the first or the last object, but this is the last object. So how do I know this? Let me get back to the loop. So I will display something inside the book entry, and I'm going to use the $sign syntax here. So if inside the template literal, inside the backticks, I want to display some dynamic value, some kind of like a variable, like the counter variable, I have to use this syntax. And this allow me to use JavaScript expressions inside the curly brackets, which means something like a variable or another expression will be converted into a string and placed inside this string and displayed on the book list. As you can see, author 3, so this happens on the 3rd iteration, the last iteration of the loop, which begs the question, why do I see only the last element? You can pause the video and think about it for a bit and then unpause to see whether you are correct. Now, if you have figured this out, this happens because I'm using the assignment operator. Each time there's a loop, I'm using the assignment operator, which means that every time the loop goes through this line, it will replace the value, the inner HTML value of the book list element. So every time a new book entry gets attached or injected to the inner HTML of this element, and then on the next iteration, a new value replaces the old one. So instead of using the assignment operator, I'm going to use the append operator, which means I'm going to append instead of replacing every single entry. And now, as you can see, I have all 3 entries, the first one, the second one, and the third one. And what's left now is to, of course, replace these hard-coded dummy values with the actual data from the book. If you remember, the book is an object. Every book is an object, which means I can access the properties by using the dot notation. So if I'm going to access the author property, and that would give me the value of that property, I can use book author or title for the title and so forth. So now I'm going to combine the things that I just showed you, like the $ syntax along with the property accessor, to replace the title with an actual value, which is going to be the title here, the book.author, and this would be the date of publication. Now I cannot do something like date of publications here. This code is going to break because the property name contains some invalid characters, the spaces. So I cannot use the dot notation when my property name contains special characters like spaces. In order to access this property properly without any errors, I have to switch to the square brackets notation. So I have to use the square brackets notation, which basically allows me to define a string that is the property of the object, and that string can accept special characters like spaces or dashes or question marks. So for this property, I have to switch to the bracket notation. For the other ones, I just have simple text characters without special characters. So I'm going to just use this simpler and much nicer notation. Of course, another thing that I could do is to, instead of using this bracket notation here, I could change this to something that doesn't contain spaces. So that could be like date of publication, or maybe make this a single word. Use the camel case notation, in this case the Pascal case notation, but I will just keep the old initial property name. And as you can see here, I have all three books. I have to double check to see whether something is missing. I can see all three of them, and all the data is contained and displayed correctly. One thing that I can do is get one step forward and convert this into a different format. So for this, I have to use the new date constructor. So if you use the new date constructor along with a date like this, let me console log the date, you'll get a date object. This is kind of like the full form, which means it has like year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, and time zone. I can, of course, this is much nicer than this full like string, but with the date object, I can get some helpful methods to actually grab something like the full year. I believe I can get like just the get full year. I can also get the get month, which is starting from 0. So the months are not like 1 up to 12. They're unfortunately start counting from 0. So January is 0 and December is 11. So I have to add 1 to actually get the correct month. And then for the date, I have, if I remember correctly, get day, which is get day. Okay, there's something get date. Let me see. Okay, the get date. The date gives me the day of the week in numbers. So from Sunday to Monday in numeric form. So instead of just displaying this form, since now I have used the date constructor to create the date object and then split it into full year, month, and date, I can replace this syntax with something that looks much nicer. Let me use once again the backticks, and then I'm going to pick the date here. Going to switch to the European like mode, and then so backticks, and then the dollar sign, and then backticks again and dollar sign to actually run these JavaScript expressions inside the template literals, the backticks. And now I believe I have something that looks a little bit nicer. Let me get rid of the spaces here. Okay. Of course, I have the same date here, which means instead of grabbing this using this dummy data, I'm going to grab the book date of publication, pass it on into the date constructor, deconstruct it into full year, month, and date. And now I have this much nicer syntax. So now that we have these three pieces of the puzzle of the date, we can basically construct any date format that we want, the US style, the European style, or maybe we can do something like put dashes here, or we can style it any way we like. So this is like the first simple implementation. Okay. The idea is to go through, is for you to go through exactly the same process after watching the video and try to recreate this from scratch. Try it once, try it twice, try it more than twice. So implement this basic version, and then once you have this ready and you have it working, you can go to the next part, which is the practice part on a completely new data set and a different template. So for the next part, which is going to be your responsibility, is you're going to go to the code that you'll find in the description below and try to work on this IKEA.yml file. So basically go through the same process, create a JSON object, basically an array of a series of objects that conform to the JSON standard, meaning all properties should have like double quotes, the available or the valid values. The value should be valid. There should be either string, boolean, number, array. Go and search for what the JSON standard can accept. See whether these entries, these fields, can be converted into either a string or a number or maybe something else. Create the JSON structure, loop over it, and then instead of displaying this into this very simple HTML, you're going to be using this code. So this is a much nicer template for each entry, and it's basically using Tailwind CSS. What you want to do is you want to copy this and create another like container for these books. You create a div with some ID, book list or whatever, and then inside there, no, sorry, there's already a structure for. So I do not need this book list. So you have this template, and the idea is to, let me just comment this code for now. So the idea is to use this template and display the data of the IKEA list of products. These are imaginary IKEA products inside this list. So basically this part is going to be, you have to make it to loop over the data and then repeat this. So each entry, as you can see, there's a part here that says copy and modify this. So if you copy this div, time and time again, you'll see there's a much nicer kind of like container with much nicer like entries. So that's your challenge. Convert this new IKEA data into a JSON structure, loop over it, and then use this template and display the data inside this new much nicer template that uses Tailwind. You can leave these categories as they are here. They will probably be used in another exercise, but for now this is your challenge. Once again, watch the video, maybe watch the video again, try to implement the basic, the first thing, the thing that I actually show you and walked you through from scratch. It will be hard in the beginning. Maybe you'll go back to the video to see, kind of like check back on a few steps. If you have finally completed it, then start it once again from scratch. The idea is to be able to create this, to recreate this without going back to the video. And then once you have implemented this from scratch, it's going to be the second, the third, the fourth time, it doesn't matter, it will improve your skills. Then you go and work on this new data. So start from the first basic implementation and then go into this kind of like a little bit more advanced implementation. So that's it for this exercise. Let me know about any problems or challenges that you're facing, or any questions on the comments below. And good luck with completing these challenges. See you in the next video. Bye bye.